Previously, in the recap, Glenn was assigned as a substitute teacher at the Elzano Academy, where he met two of the students, Rumia and Sistine, and later discovered Rumia's true power, which was a magical amplifying power. And for this power, a criminal organization known as Divine Wisdom had been after her for quite some time. She was the princess of the Elzano Empire, and her mother, Alicia, chose to erase her existence by faking her death. Sistine's friend's parents adopted her after that, but they somehow got wind of it and were now after her. Glenn has kept his identity hidden all this time, claiming to work in the Imperial Army and was even assigned to protect her. But she appears to be aware that Glenn has always protected her in the past. So then, as the story continues, Sistine started training with Glenn so that she could also protect Rumia from any harms that might come to her. And so at the academy they got a new transfer student named Rel. She was in the Imperial Army with Glenn, and it was from that time that Rel had feelings for him, and now she was transferred to the academy as an undercover bodyguard for Rumia by her mother Alicia. She seemed weird to the others since she could use military-grade magic, but at the cafe looking at how cute she was, everyone had a change of opinion. Apart from the fact that Class 2 got a field trip to the alchemy lab that was near the beach, the boys were excited to see all the girls in bikinis. And soon at night boys were planning to peek into the girls' room but were stopped by Glenn then while he was resting at the beach. He saw that Sistine and Rumia got closer to Rel, but after everyone was asleep, Rel came to meet with Glenn so she could find out why he left the Imperial Army. She loves her, but Glenn foolishly swayed her away. Seeing him like this, Rel thought that Rumia and Sistine had stolen Glenn from her. After that, she lost her interest and became a cold person. No matter how much Rumia and Sistine tried to peruse her, she started getting away from them. Later, at the alchemy lab, they were fascinated by the research they saw of the Chimera. Sistine was intrigued to see artificial life forms, but Rumia disliked it, saying they were like playing with a life. So the alchemy researcher Birks became interested in Sistine because she was learning more about the research they were doing, but the resurrection of the dead was supposed to be impossible. And precisely this project, New Life, was not bringing back the dead but to create a new life form. For their project, they needed 3 elements. A body created by a gene, a person's memory, and an altered ether for resetting one's soul, which would still be considered a clone and not the person who died. For all of this nonsense, several people had to die, so the project to revive life came to an end. Then as the time went by at the lab and everyone was leaving, Glenn tried to pursue Riel but she ran away, and genuinely, Rumia and Sistine were getting worried sick for her. So Glenn decided to bring her back. But when he arrived, he saw that Rel was with an imposter posing as his brother Glenn. He thought that Rel wouldn't fall for this petty trick, but he was wrong and got fatally stabbed. Rel's father was supposed to be dead, yet he came back to life because of Divine Wisdom's lab, and to get away he had to take Rumia to them and to get his freedom. Rel kidnapped Rumia right in front of Sistine, and she couldn't do anything because she didn't want to hurt her.
While on that note, Albert brought Glenn as he was on the verge of his death, but there was a way to save him, and for that he needed Sistine's help. With both combined their power, they brought Glenn back from his death, and after while Glenn was with Riel, he wanted to help him even at the time when Riel kidnapped Rumia, but that time he was stopped by the person of Divine Wisdom. She was so powerful that he was struggling to keep up the fight with her, and as soon as they caught Rumia, she left that all that happiness with him. So, during that fight, he actually placed a tracker on that maid and followed its signal, which led them to an underground facility. Seeing them, Bruck tried to stop them with his newly created chimera, but it couldn't compete, so Bruck appears and reavels his monster form to kill Albert and Glenn.
As Glenn made his way to where Rumia was being held, he ran into that imposter again. And because Ri was hell-bent on protecting his brother, Glenn only had one question for her: could she remember what his brother's name was? She suddenly realized she didn't even know his name, and all of his memories were also hazy. So, back in time, when Divine Wisdom was conducting their Project Revive Life, the main scientists of that were Shaun and Rainer, and the one who was an experiment was his little sister Alicia. They were making a perfect clone of her, but Shaun knew of its dark side, so he couldn't let them succeed, so he contacted Glenn to put this entire research to an end, but the one who was with them in this experiment was Rainer. He knew Shaun had betrayed them, so he murdered them in cold blood. Shaun died right then and there, and Alicia was severely injured to the point where she couldn't be saved, so all he could have done was save the only one who remained, the clone that they created, which was Riel. Glenn then wanted to put an end to this, but Rainer had already created a perfect replica without any emotion and ordered them to be killed. So Riel steps in to kill them while Glenn saves Rumia from that lunatic Rainer. Then, when they returned, Sistine did not treat Riel coldly or anything, on the contrary, they became much closer friends as a result of this incident. And when they returned to their daily lives at the academy, a new professor arrived. He was Sistine's childhood friend and also his fiancé. Glenn was pretty smug that Sistine had a fiancé all of a sudden, and for it Sue blew him away for being annoying. Then at the lecture Glenn and Rumia were the only ones who noticed that what Leos was teaching these immature kids was military-grade magic that could very well become dangerous. Then after that Leo took Sistine out for a walk, but his real intention was to persuade Sistine to abandon her dream of solving the mystery of the Sky Castle and join him in military magic. Glenn then was unable to hold himself back, that he was pressuring Sistine to leave her dream. Then out the blue Sistine got an wild idea that she announced that she and Glenn are in love and soon they would marry each other, and Glenn got the clue from that and started acting as a degenerate. So Leos proposed a duel to Glenn, with the winner marrying Sistine. He made this duel not as a one-on-one combat but as a duel as a strategist to see who was more capable of teaching. Naturally, other professors thought that Leos would win given his intelligence, but all of his strategies were weaker against Glenn, and the match ended in a draw. Then, out of frustration, Leo issues another challenge to Glenn, which he obviously accepts without considering how Sistine feels about it, and for honesty. Leo was a scumbag that he was following someone else's order to marry Sistine, and Sistine was sick off it that Glenn just wanted to marry her for her family's money. But looking back how Glenn protects them without caring about the risks, this would imply that he was also shown only to act cool. Then, as Rumia suggested, Sistine went to Glenn that night to find out his true motive, and there was no way she could believe he was after her money, so he began telling her about her past. That he met a girl in the Imperial Army who looked a lot like her at the time, and because of his mistake, she lost her life, and that still aches his heart, but she reminded him of her. And for this time he wanted to do everything he could to protect Sistine. All of their conversation was overheard by Leos, who has a high ranking in the military, so he got his hands on Glenn's files and dug up how cold-blooded murderer he was. Glenn couldn't take it and used his full power to deal magic to deal with him, but just like him. Leo was an expert at hand-to-hand combat, and even more, he used a power that turned imagination into reality, a power that was long forgotten. Glenn was beaten badly this time, so Sistine considered going after him, but Leo stopped her and threatened her that he knew Rumia's secret in order to force her to marry him. And as soon as that happened, she decided to marry him to protect Rumia, but Glenn breaks into the church to stop their marriage, and while they were on the run, zombie-like people blocked their path. They became like this due to a drug known as Angel's Dust, which caused them to become the puppets of their master, who blindly followed their orders. And seeing them again ticked Glenn of that began murdering them one by one, seeing this heinous sight. Sistine lost her cool after rejecting Glenn, so there appeared Leo again, but this time he was a fake Leo. His real name is Jadis, and he's from the Imperial Army with the code name of Justice. He's a maniac who wanted to kill everyone he saw as a murderer, even Glenn's partner Sarah, whom he loved, and he even killed Leo right after the duel for his satisfaction. But he still let Sistine run away, as things were about to get ugly between them, but after running away she realized she made a mistake rejecting Glenn, like even thinking Glenn was a murderer. So she returned to help him. The ability to make imagination in a reality was him all along, but Glenn failed to recognize him that evening. However, Glenn and Sistine dealt the together deals a blow to him and the puppet he had summoned, but using this much mana strains Sistine, and at that precise moment, Jadis flees. So now Sistine no longer feared Glenn because she had developed feelings for him, and that how our anime comes to an end. For more anime recaps, please subscribe to the channel. Until then, be careful. For more anime recaps, please subscribe to the channel.